It was a quiet Sunday morning when I, Emily Carter, walked into my Uncle David's house. My uncle was more than just family, he had been like a second father to me. Growing up, he was always there for me, teaching me life lessons, guiding me when my parents were busy with work, and even cheering me on during my high school graduation. To me, he was the most trustworthy man I knew. That's why what I saw that day in his room left me shaken in ways I never expected. The day began normally enough. My mom had asked me to drop off some homemade soup for Uncle David because he had been feeling a little under the weather. She thought a family visit would cheer him up, and since I was already on my way back from the grocery store, I volunteered to go. I pulled into his driveway, carrying the warm container in a bag, smiling to myself as I thought about how he would laugh and joke about my cooking skills, saying they would never measure up to my mom's. When I reached the door, I noticed something unusual. It was slightly open. That struck me as odd because Uncle David was always careful about locking up. At first, I thought maybe he had just forgotten since he wasn't feeling well. I called out his name softly as I stepped inside, but the house was quiet. I figured he was resting in his bedroom, so I made my way down the hallway, trying not to make too much noise. That was when it happened. I pushed the door to his room open, and what I saw inside completely changed the way I looked at him, myself, and our family. He wasn't sick in bed like I had thought. Instead, I found him sitting at the edge of his bed, holding a showbox full of old letters and photographs. His face looked worn, not from illness, but from something far deeper: guilt, sorrow, and regret. When he noticed me standing there, he quickly tried to close the box, but it was too late. A few letters had spilled out onto the floor, and I couldn't help but see the handwriting. It was my Aunt Rebecca's, his late wife. She had passed away 5 years ago, and since then, Uncle David had never remarried. We all thought he was just too heartbroken to move on. But as I looked closer, I saw another letter in a different handwriting, one signed by someone named Linda. I froze. Uncle David saw the confusion on my face and sighed heavily. He motioned for me to sit down, and after a long silence, he began to speak. "Emily," he said, his voice trembling, "there are things about my past that I've never told anyone. Things I'm not proud of. But since you're here, maybe it's time I stop hiding." What followed was a story that shook me to my core. He explained that during his marriage to my aunt, there had been a period of struggle, a time when their relationship had been fragile. He had made mistakes, ones that weighed on him every single day. Linda, the woman from the letters, had been part of his life during that difficult time. He had never told anyone about her, not even my mom. When Aunt Rebecca passed, the guilt multiplied. He felt as if he had betrayed her memory and carried that burden in silence. As I listened, my heart felt heavy. Here was a man I had admired my whole life, confessing that he had not been perfect, that he had made choices he regretted deeply. But instead of anger, what I felt was compassion. I saw the pain in his eyes, the way he clutched those letters as if they were both a punishment and a reminder of lessons learned. We sat in his room for hours. He told me about how he and Aunt Rebecca eventually found their way back to each other, rebuilding their trust and love before she passed away. He explained that the showbox was not just a collection of memories, but also a symbol of how far he had come in understanding loyalty, forgiveness, and family. That day changed everything for me because it made me realize something important. We often put the people we love on pedestals, thinking they can never make mistakes. But everyone, even the ones we admire most, is human. What matters is not the mistakes they make, but what they learn from them and how they choose to move forward. In the weeks after that conversation, I noticed a transformation in Uncle David. He seemed lighter, freer, as if sharing his secret had lifted a weight he had carried for years. Our bond grew even stronger because now I knew him not just as my uncle, but as a man who had lived, stumbled, learned, and grown. This experience taught me to approach people with understanding instead of judgment. It reminded me that family is not about being perfect, it's about being real, forgiving, and supporting each other through every chapter of life. I walked into his room that day thinking I would just deliver some soup. Instead, I walked out with a life lesson that I will carry with me forever.